of different things you could do as a group working together that you can pull in, use, change, and adapt according to your specific context and needs. And through observation, by applying these patterns, people are more happy, more effective, and it brings more consciousness in the way we work and interact with each other. So when I say conscious, I refer to the fact that we become more aware of the things, our like usual habitual ways of interacting, and we can have a decision whether we want to continue with that or not. And this work, what glues all the patterns together are the principles. So it's a principle-based framework of patterns. And on the screen you see here the 7 principles, and I'll come back with a presentation for maybe for each of them and how they connect with each other later. But just to see that even if, let's say, there's nothing else of value for you from this session, to reflect on these principles and how it might change or improve the way you're working right now if you were to consider applying these principles in your organization might look like. I think it's really valuable. I'm sure considering your area of work, you're already applying some of these anyway. So here is a map of the different patterns, and if we were to group them together in categories, that's how it would look like. So there are patterns for coordinating work. So other than the role of the coordinator, so aside from that, what other ways in which we can coordinate the work? Patterns for making and involving agreements. This here includes decision making and others. Patterns that support us to have more effective meetings. That refer to building organizations, to people and roles. Here we have selecting people into roles, evaluating them in their role. Pattern to structure our collaboration on an organizational level, and here I refer specifically to other patterns than the typical hierarchy, because many people don't actually know other alternatives about that, and patterns to support alignment throughout the whole system. Also, patterns for governance. I know this might be for some of you like a taboo word, government and governance. And when I say this, I refer to strictly the essence of governance, which is making decisions together that affect the course of the project of the collaboration. So if it would be like building the banks of the river, so the water can flow to the places where it's most needed. That's a way to look at it. So how can we do that? So S3, it's free and open. All the resources, including this presentation, you can use, share, replicate, as long as you use the Creative Commons license, and it's lightweight. Something that you can just put into action, and it's definitely supporting you to be more effective. Okay. So any of you have heard of sociocracy? I mean, I know some of you for sure, but can you, maybe somebody can translate me with a show of hands if you heard about sociocracy before this meeting?
I've heard about it, but I've not read about it. I just, to me, it was more what was in the word, in the name. So a social way of people coming together and making joint decisions was all I thought when I heard it.
Yeah.
I looked on Wikipedia last night. But I actually got confused with sortition, but that's different, isn't it? But no, it sounds interesting though. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so basically sociocracy, if we look to the root of the word, it refers to rule, power, or decision-making power to the social group or the friends. So, in other words, people who are closest to the work make decisions about their work. And it has a long history, 165 years of evolution. I think in the wiki page you have most of the history there. Just to say that it starts with Auguste Comte and his idea of a future where scientists and elites are making decisions for everybody, and this is quite concerning for me in terms of looking at the history. But just to acknowledge that that's the root, that's where the whole idea started. And then later it evolved, Lester Frank words came back to the root of the word and thought about how it would look like if actually people who are close to the work would make the decision and not some elite. I will jump straight to Gerald Endenberg, which is in 1970s. He found out about sociocracy and actually implemented that early version into his company, and what turned out to be quite successful. That was in Netherlands, and from there the sociocratic method was certified, and now in Netherlands you could, as a company, use sociocracy, and if you do so, you don't need a workers' council. It recognizes that because of the nature of the method, people are represented in all the decisions. Therefore, you don't need a separate entity to do that. Nowadays, there are like different trends coming out of this. One is holacracy. Have any of you heard about holacracy? Just to know if it's worth mentioning something or not.
Yeah, this is Scott Myrtle from Lansing. I've read up a little on it, and I get a lot of questions from people about the differences between philosophy and sociocracy, and I think I have a pretty good handle on the difference. But if Lily, if you would just address that issue specifically, that would be really helpful for me, anyway.
Okay, I want to check if the others also.
No one here has heard of it except me. Oh, me and two of us.
I've heard the word, but I've not had a chance to follow up on like what it means or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know a little of the story from James, and then John heard the word, but no other context.
Okay, so I see two options. Either I can say something about it, or for those who are interested, I can send you a link with a recording, a telecall that James made just a few days ago that specifically addresses the differences between S3 and holacracy and other frameworks like Agile, Lean, Teal organizations, reinventing organizations. So all this topic is covered in that call.
Should we just get the links?
I would propose that. I want to check. Yeah.
I think it'd be fine for those of us in the room to get the link, so we can hear more about sociocracy during our time together, if that's...
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing that video. Yeah, the link is great. And focus on sociocracy. Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll send the link.
Thank you.
I'll just make a note to put it in the chat. Okay, so we can continue. Okay, but and to say S3 was it's basically next iteration of what was the classical sociocratic framework in 1970s, and it integrates aspects from nonviolent communication, from agile, which usually relates more to IT context, so a way of working that it's quite flat and it has short feedback loops, and the work itself is much more effective. So all these different influences led to what we call now Sociocracy 3.0. James Priest and Bernard Bockelbrink from Berlin, they discovered sociocracy while trying to put together a series of materials free online on the internet, because there are not so many about sociocracy. And while doing so, they realized there were some tensions related to the content, and they sat together, looked through what those tensions are, and basically evolved the framework. There is a website, Sociocracy 3.0. You can learn more about it, and there is no certification or anything. We're just here. I joined in the last year in the process of writing about it and sharing with the world, and it's something we're doing it out of passion because we think that most people really don't know about other ways to organize themselves, and this is why we fall back into the normal command and control paradigm. Okay. Let me think about it. I think I'll go to the principles now. 7 principles. Equivalence means giving a voice to people that are affected about the work, about that decision, to give a voice in the decision-making process, to ensure that even if they don't directly take part in it, they do have a voice if they wish so. Consent, I'll do it last because I want to spend more time on it. Transparency means make the information available throughout the system, and unless there is a reason why to keep it a secret, make sure everybody knows, is informed about the decisions they're taking part of. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Accountability. It refers to the fact that by applying these principles, the rest of the principles, people become naturally more accountable for the decision, because if you're part of it and you give your consent to it, then you have a greater sense of ownership on the decision, and therefore also you are more accountable for it. Effectiveness, as opposed to efficiency, which is getting things done really fast. Effectiveness refers to getting to where we want to go without, in the shortest way possible, but without compromising the communication between us or any other aspect. So looking at the whole system, what is more effective way to engage in actions or decisions so everybody still stays on board. Empiricism means that we base our actions on our experience of things, and if the experience changes, then we also base, we are open to change our knowledge, what we know about things. So test what we think we know and change that knowledge based on our experience. And therefore continuously improve, that's the last principle, continuously improve the way we do things, the way we work. So have short feedback loops on that. Okay. Consent, the principle of consent. And first I want to bring the conversation to consensus, and maybe some of you can tell me what you understand through consensus. How would you define it?
Majority view, isn't it? Majority view, the majority decision.
Going to agreement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, majority decision.
Were you able to hear Jill?
Coming to agreement.
Okay. Anyone else? Has anyone been part of a group that uses consensus? I'm just really familiar with people's perception that it's really slow and arduous because everyone needs to agree and one person can block. Although I've been in situations where people use like some sort of modified consensus that works just fine, but I think a lot of people are very down on consensus because they think you can never get anything done.
Yeah, I think it goes a bit further than majority that you want to create. The more kind of profound, or I don't know if profound would be the word you use, but more of a group consensus than that, you know, more than the majority. It should be almost everyone, I guess. It's kind of the mandate of it, you know?
Could you hear Travis?
Something about, no, I actually just read, understood between the lines.
Yeah.
Something about a more mature version of consensus. Okay. Yeah, so I can pick up on that. So consensus with unanimity means that any person can block at any point, and the reason for that is not defined in any way. So anybody can block at any time for any reason. It can also lead to like personal preferences, whatever other underlying conflicts or changes, differences in opinions there are, and therefore it can take a long time. The essence of consensus with unanimity is everybody is on board, everybody wants or like supports the decision and has a sense of ownership in it. And more mature groups that practice consensus and they with unanimity, they actually work quite fine. It's a matter of understanding that actually it's not so much about the best decision. The thing that if we were do it, if it was just me, this is how I would do it. So then we all have to find a way that works best for everybody. But something that keeps us moving and keeps the group engaged. Consent is derived from consensus, and what it adds is the fact that people can object if they have reasons to do so. And then I'm going to find the consent. Okay. Consent is the absence of reasons not to do something. So we can still present our objection. We can still say, I object to this proposal, and the difference is you have to explain somehow why. And how to define that is to explain the objection is a reason why doing something impedes or misses an opportunity to improve the flow of value in the organization. So if one can explain why somehow what's being proposed impedes the flow of value in the organization or misses an opportunity to improve it somewhere, then you have consent. And Of course, if there is a reason why not to do something, we want to know it, because nobody wants to go ahead and do stuff if it's obvious for somebody. And that in S3 and also plastic sociocracy are seen as gifts, are seen as pieces of information that emerge through an individual, and they belong to the whole circle. So it's not stigmatized like, oh my God, objections, you objected. We just spent like 3 days trying to figure out where to go, and now you're objecting and everything goes to hell. I don't know if any of you had that experience. I personally did. This is why I'm giving it as an example. So I think the person who objects is somehow not support the system. And in S3, objections are gifts, and we want to listen to that, and they're seen as something that is really of value. It's a quite radical change of perspective for some people. At least for me, it was. So how do we do that? How do we actually, when somebody says an objection, we say, oh yeah, it's valid or not? And actually, the parameters are quite flexible, and any group and organization can define their own way of doing that. But basically, it has to answer the question, how does doing this impede or misses an opportunity to improve flow value to an existing organizational driver? Considering that the decisions, we're aiming for decisions that are good enough for now and safe enough to try. So rather than spending hours coming up with the perfect decisions, we're thinking more in terms of what's the next step, what's something that is good enough, that brings us forward, it's safe enough to try, and considering we will reflect on that decision, we will evaluate the decision in a short time. What can we afford to risk right now? Any questions on this, or thoughts, reflections?
No.
I don't think so, not here. Scott?
Okay.
Could we have an example of how that works?
Great. Thank you.
I think you'll need to speak up.
Could we have an example of how it works then in practice?
Did you hear that, Lily?
Okay. Yes, an example. Oh, guys, I see I'm talking a lot, and I'm missing some kind of feedback or some interaction, and my proposal is to like have like some feedback from one of you, at least one or two people. Are there any objections for my proposal?
I have no objections.
No.
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 So do you see any reason why the proposal impedes or misses an opportunity to improve flow of value to this time together?
No. No one here does. I don't think.
No.
We have no objections here.
Okay. So different decision making works like this. I view something that is happening, and what I see might be needed, which we call in terms of sociocracy 3.0 a driver. And then the team agrees, yeah, this is what's happening, and I agree that this might be needed. And then I come up with a proposal, and I say, okay, I invite some feedback from one or two people. That's my proposal. And then the next step would be to ask you, do you have any questions? Because I want to make sure that everybody understood my proposal. We often make decisions that we actually don't understand, or there is no space for clarifying what the proposal is. So that's the third step. The fourth step is a brief response. Oh yeah, I feel good about it. I'm not sure. Whatever. That would be like brief responses, just to get a feeling of what's the energy in the room. Imagine you make a decision about investing a huge amount of money in some project, and if the brief response is quite low energy and disengaged, that says a lot already about the proposal. So we're gathering all this information, and then we harvest objections. So let's say somebody has an objection. What do you do with it? In consensus-oriented decision making, what you would do is start from zero. Say, okay, we cannot do this. Let's throw it out the window and start new. In consent, we focus on integrating the objection in the proposal. That means that if somebody has an information that is missing in the system, and when they present it, we try to see how we can evolve our proposal, so we bring it to the next step. So we harvest the objections, we integrate the wisdom, and celebrate. There is a difference between having an objection and having a concern, a concern about the proposal. So I might be concerned, oh, but maybe it takes a long time, or maybe, if this happens, option 376 out of the infinite universe, then it might be a problem. So concerns, although they contain wisdom, often they don't stop proposals from becoming agreements. But we do, after hearing the objections, listen to concerns, and even if there is time, evolve the proposal so it integrates the concerns as well. I would really love to give another example, but I don't have any more context right now.
For instance, something that always strikes me in climate change discussions is the lack of ability to reach any consensus. So how would something like consent decision making work? I know it's probably a very complicated example, but how would that work in that context, do you think, and how would it be more effective?
Yes. So the focus is very different. Instead of the focus being how can we get everybody on board, we ask the question, are there any objections? Are there any reasons why not to do it like this? So that shifts very much the focus of the group.
Could I just make a smaller example off of that, maybe? And you can tell me if this makes sense.
Yeah.
Instead, it would be like,
Yes.
might be a group of people coming together to take some sort of environmental action, and you might say something like, you might make a proposal, we'll increase the fuel efficiency of our cars because we're concerned about climate change. And maybe someone would say, I have an objection to that because I don't believe that humans are contributing to climate change. And maybe in the discussion, you would go around and have enough, you would integrate that objection to the extent where you would say, well, there are lots of other reasons to increase the fuel efficiency of our cars, including low level ozone, et cetera. And so you might just change the wording of the proposal, but your objection needs to be related to the vision, mission, and aims. So that's one thing that is helpful, is you need to know you're clear on the vision, mission, and aims of the group. But so we might integrate that objection to the point where we say, we're going to increase the fuel efficiency of our cars, and we won't just emphasize climate change as the reason until we satisfy your objection. Maybe we're not willing to take climate change out of the picture all together. So you might consent with concern, which means you're registering that you still don't really like the climate change piece, but we've changed the proposal enough that it satisfies everyone. And then we would all consent to it now, asking the questions, is it good enough for now, safe enough to try? And then generally, when will we revisit it? So in case we realize it's been a total disaster to have more efficient cars, we could revisit it later. So does that help get at that? And does that seem accurate enough, Lily?
Yeah. So in this case, somebody has an objection that relates to the wording or the phrasing, and it relates to his perspective on what that means. So the group might have a conversation or an agreement of the wording, and that can happen, and that's a way to integrate his objection, or to say actually it means something else in this case, and this is just a concern, and put it aside. I'm guessing, like, if it would be me in the decision-making process, as you said, it depends on the overall perspective of the organization, what they're doing and why. You call that a vision, mission, and aims. This is one way of defining that. There are other ways too. And basically anything that supports building alignment in the organization. I think it's a good example. And I would say that there are like several reasons why decisions take a long time and they become arduous in groups. One is lack of clarity around why the decision is made. So you describe the situation and a proposal. Before in S3, before we make any decision, we consent to the driver. So we consent to why we're making the decision, to what is exactly happening in the organization, in the system, and what we think might be needed. Like, for example, we are we have our carbon footprint is way above the average, and there is a need to lower it, or there is a need to decrease our carbon consumption. If everybody in the team, let's say, in the organization, agree that that's and it's needed to lower the consumption, then that's the starting point for any decision you might make. We often are presented with proposals, we don't even know why, what kind of needs they're serving, and why we should even spend our time to decide on that. So the first step, consent to the driver of the decision, is crucial. And the consent means, yes, it is really what is happening and what I think might be needed. And secondly, yes, it is relevant and important for us as a group and organization to spend now some time making a decision about it. Okay, so one step is why we're making the, one impediment is unclarity around why we're making the decision. Another impediment is about the proposal itself. So if you, Stephanie, come up in your role as a leader, founder, and say, guys, I see this is happening and this might be needed. My proposal is to do A, B, C, D. Are there any objections? People might not have objections, no? And still the difference between you coming up with a proposal and spending some time in a group of people putting the proposal together is very different, because it gives another sense of ownership and engagement and participation around it. Because then people like think, why should I even care? Why am I even asked about it? but actually taking part in the forming of the proposal is really empowering. That is not to say that every decision has to go through the whole group, but until people get used to the principle of consent, which is you can voice objections at any time if you see reasons to do so, then it's very often we're falling into, oh, this is Stephanie's proposal, and this is just proposal and whatever, and it's not mine. So consent, decision making, it's a safety check for objections, and the proposal doesn't always come from one person. It can come from one group of people. I think those were my 2 points. I really think more examples probably would be needed. But let's check the questions so far. Or observations, comments.
Yeah, I think I get it. So you do this, and then with so this would be a way of being able to jointly manage anything, wouldn't it? So, and when you become across.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
So this could be a process to jointly manage projects. And going back to the slide where you were saying about where we are and where we want to be, and using that as a way of working through conflict as well. So it's recognising that there would be conflict in joint management, and also having a process of being able to work through that as well. It'd be good to try it to see how it would work before I could have any kind of thoughts on it better than that really, but I get the process. I like it anyway.
Okay.
Does the sociocracy software, does that work within organizations as well as across the organization? Is it a group decision-making software for individual organizations, or is it meant to coordinate the activities of various organizations?
Could you hear that?
Yes, so is the question, does consent decision making apply only in a group of people or in a wider organization?
Do you want to come closer? That's not exactly what he was asking. Why don't you come and speak into it if you don't mind?
I was just curious if the software itself allows groups to make decisions within their own organization, but then also to kind of coordinate and collaborate with other organizations as well, and how maybe that cross-organizational coordination would work between groups. It's just kind of a general question, really, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good question. We often need to collaborate with external organizations that have different interests and stuff, and that's where actually most conflict or potential conflict is. I guess my answer is you need to consent to use the principle of consent. So if there is the wish to collaborate between two parties with different focus and different interests, that's a great starting point. And having agreement to use consent as a way of making decisions would then ensure that to happen. But if the other organization doesn't want to, you cannot force it. It would be against the principle of consent.
Can I add a little?
And people have objections more. Yes, please.
Oh, no, finish what you were saying. I'm sorry, I thought you were done. And then I'll add.
I forgot my idea right now. Please.
Okay, sorry about that. So one thing we haven't talked that much yet about the driver, but framing things as drivers instead of goals is helpful. So the driver is kind of like the need that you're looking to fill. So if you are going across organizations, you would just, I mean, that's one reason that it feels really effective to me to use consent, because you agree on the need. Like once you have an understanding that you're responding to a common need and you've articulated that, then it kind of backs you up from people's preconceived notions about what should happen to fill that need. So it kind of gets you to more of the essence about the thing that you're making a decision about. So I feel like that can help the aspect of being across organizations. And then again, yeah, like she said, once you consent to consent and you're clear that you have a shared vision of the driver, then when you're talking about, if you have objections based in the vision, based in that driver that you've agreed on, and having your 3 questions good enough for now, safe enough to try. In my experience, we've been practicing this in a lot of contexts since we've been learning about it, and I feel like it's so much to learn still, but for the last year that we've been doing it in all these different contexts, including like I work in this group that's like a completely loose affiliation of whoever shows up to respond to police violence in my neighborhood. So there are a lot of different perspectives, but we found this like as a really nice way to just keep moving forward. So for me, it works well in a lot of contexts because you have the clarity about the need that you're responding to, and then that helps you get to more of what your common goals might be.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. And I would say a bit more about drivers. That leads very well into it, I would say, and just to give more context to that and how to articulate drivers and so on. So in X3, we talk about navigating by attention. So this means I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing in my daily work, and when I experience attention, I stop and reflect on what's happening and what's needed that causes me to have to experience that tension, and then figure out where exactly in the system, who is most accountable in the whole system to respond to that. So when I say tension, I mean attention either between the current reality, what is happening in this moment, and what I would wish would happen. That relates very much to our value system, because somebody might bump into somebody asking for money on the street, and they wouldn't feel any tension because it's just something that doesn't touch them so much, and somebody else might feel a lot of tension, and they might be motivated to act. So tension is a difference between the current reality and the preferred reality, and also a tension between stimulus, whatever is stimulating us to act, and the response. So, when the glass of water is falling off the table, we usually immediately respond by trying to catch it. And that makes a lot of sense. In terms of decision making with many people in a group, in a big organization, having this immediate reaction is not always the most effective way, because we're falling into our old habitual ways of doing things, how we learned in the past, and it doesn't leave space for something else to happen. So navigating by attention means pausing between stimulus and response, checking really what's happening and what we think might be needed. Sometimes what we think is happening is not the reality. So having that check mechanism with other people, having the conversation and say, hey, I see this is happening, would be very valuable to calibrate. When we're describing conditions, what is happening in the environment and what we think might be needed, we are articulating a driver. the driver is a situation that motivates action, and it has these two elements. It's a phrase, what's happening, describing what's happening and what's needed. And I'm going to go straight for examples. So a circle, when I say a circle, I mean a group of people working together on a certain task. People are taking on tasks, but some are incomplete by the time they're due. We need to ensure that work is done on time. This is an example of driver statement that belongs to a team. And I don't know if you see the screen. Does everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the black writing, people are taking on tasks, but some are incomplete by the time they are due. This is what's describing what's happening. Okay? It's an objective fact that anybody can say, yeah, for sure this is what's happening. And the blue part describes what's needed. We need to ensure that work is done on time. And that is more subjective. You know, other groups, they might say what we need is actually to relax and don't have so many due dates. Others, so it's more relative. Yeah, we need to ensure that work is done on time is what we agree as a group of people working together that is needed. As you can see, it doesn't say we need to cut half of people's salaries if they're missing on their due date. That's more like a solution already, a quite radical one, but just as an example. What we describe in the second part of the driver statement is what is missing, what is lacking in the system is not the solution, what might fix it. So in this first example, if I would be part of a team applying S3 patterns, then we would meet together and come up with a proposal on how to address this driver using proposal forming process, which I won't go into it, but there is a pattern called proposal forming, which is exactly for groups of people to to tap the collective intelligence of a group of people to come up with a good enough or now safe enough to try decision where everybody in the circle participates. There are other examples of driver statements, but what I want to tell you a story right now. So let's say during my daily work, I see something happening and something might be needed, and then I figure out myself, like I articulate the driver, and then the next question I ask myself is, who in the organization might be accountable for it? Is it me in my role? Let's say it is, then I put it in my to-do list. You know, that's something I need to do. It might be that I look and I think, actually, Stephanie, maybe it's in your role. You know, I'm using Stephanie as an example because I have difficulty remembering the other names. So sorry about that. So, and Stephanie says, oh yeah, this is in my role, you know, it does belong to me. I will just do it, you know. So he puts it also in her to-do list. The to-do list is what we call operations. And you see on the left side of the screen that's what we call a backlog. You know, the table, you have the first column would be the things to do. The second one would be the things that are in progress, and the last column would be the things that we did already. So this is a way to visualize work. So let's say, Stephanie, you receive the driver from me, say, yeah, it is in my role, you put it on your to-do list, and then you process it. Another scenario would be, I give Stephanie the driver, and she said, well, yeah, it is related to me, but it's not really my decision to make, but it does belong to our team or our circle. And then Stephanie would put it in the governance backlog. So the blue table on the right side. The governance backlog is that place where all the drivers that require some kind of decision-making process goes. And you can prioritize the drivers to see, okay, what's most urgent and important to respond to right now. You form an agenda, meet at a certain time, and process those drivers using the decision-making patterns. And what you see in the last circle at the bottom is the organization. Yeah, you have the organization with all the different backlogs, operations, and governance. And in the middle, you see there are like different circles and sub-circles, so teams within teams, people in different roles, and it all evolves organically according to what is happening and what is needed in each moment. It's an organization that moves and adapts, is flexible to meet whatever needs of the organization or of the environment they choose to respond to. Imagine this correlated with the principle of consent, which is inviting objections from anybody in the system if they care to express them. They're like some of the key ingredients for an organization to flourish. But there are 4 ways to respond to drivers. We either do something, like we saw, we put it into our to-do list and we just do it. We either make an agreement about it, like in the example earlier, about people taking on tasks and they're not doing. Oh, that's mine. We might decide the proposal might be every time somebody misses their due date, all the team leaves everything and helps that person to finish the task. That might be an agreement. Just one example. Yeah, we might say, let's create a new role. Let's create the role of the person who's monitoring all the due dates and kind of goes and stresses out everybody so they're finishing on time. And that's their role. Or we might create a circle. We might say, wow, this is a really complex issue. One person cannot do it. It's up to a group of people to do it. Let's create a new circle. So these are the 4 ways. And the people in the role or the circle create their own strategy. What that means is that if I have a role, I have some key responsibilities that I'm responding to. But how I do it, it's up to me to decide. So according to my preferences, my abilities, my skills, I will develop my strategy. And as a safety mechanism, I come back to the circle that created my role and ask, are there any objections if I do things like this? And then you further improve the proposal if necessary, or if it's the case, so that the strategy doesn't belong to me, and then if something happens and it doesn't work, everybody is like, oh, Lily, I knew it, you did a bad job. But everybody's. I need to plug in my laptop. But can you give me any comments, reflections, or questions until now, please?
Who has comments, reflections, and questions?
I really like the supportive way of if someone's struggling to meet a deadline, that it's, that you have people that will come in and help with that. That's actually a specified role, so people just don't turn their heads. I like that.
Can you hear okay? Other thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes, I can.
What's facilitating this communication? So, say you're considering or you're asking the group, this is the role that I'm performing, or this is the action I'm going to take. Does anyone have any disagreements about that? Like, how are you actually communicating with other people in the group? Is there do you send out a text message to everyone, or or is it just kind of through just general dialogue and discussion that would occur in the workplace? Just trying to think of how this is operational.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So it depends on how your organization communicates, I guess. Ultimately, it depends on that. If I talk in terms of S3, then if I wrote my strategy or I developed my strategy and I want to check for further objections or concerns from the team, then what I will do is put the driver of my role along with my proposal for the strategy on the governance meeting backlog, on the governance backlog. And that will become of the governance meeting, part of the governance meeting as an agenda item. And when we meet together to process all the things we need to decide on, that will be addressed. Especially if I use Trello. I don't know if you are familiar with Trello. Trello, it's an online platform. Does any of you know Trello?
Yeah, I use it. Yeah, Kate, I use it. Yeah.
And I've heard that Lumio.
Okay.
Software.
Okay, Kate. So can you? Yeah.
Yes,
Lumio.
Is it true that it's good for a software tool for sociocracy? I've heard groups using sort of sociocratic seeming decision making using Lumio. Do you ever use it?
Yeah, I know of groups using it, and I personally didn't look into it so far, but it is on my list to check it out, so I cannot express any opinions about it. Mm-hmm. But any system, if you're working together in the same office, how I would do it is put on a wall, have a visual representation of the governance backlog. So you would have this 3 columns chart with what is to decide, what is the agenda for next time, and what is already decided. And then everybody in the office, whenever they have a driver to add, they will just go to the wall and write a post-it and add it. On Trello, it's easy because you basically have the online version of a post-it with much more details. So you can add comments, put links to the post-its. This is why I enjoy it. And Lumio, I'm afraid I'm not I'm not up to date with how it works.
Yeah, I find Trello really useful because it enables the whole team to be able to connect in. You can alert people if you've added something, so they need to look at it. You can connect it into Dropbox to all the documents, and just as the way that you've got those, what's most urgent, it literally is a visual representation of that, so you can move things along. It's really helpful.
I've found an identified driver. The thing with using the software is that everybody needs to be able to know how to use it. So that would be the first identified need that I would definitely take to the circle. I would say if we was to use this process, we would have to speak to the board to do it first. And that would be the first thing that I would put on the board, that we need to know how to use it, because for it to be effective, and for everybody to be involved, then we all need to be able to access it.
So yeah, what you do next to make that jump.
That would be the first step towards. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, can you say again the last thing?
I was just explaining that the first identified need or driver to start the process of doing this in an office would be to first of all have a board and do it on the board, because I think that the first need for myself and for many others would be we wouldn't know how to use Trello and we wouldn't be able to access it. So to make this effective would be the first step in making it all possible. So
yes.
Yeah.
Or never go to Trello if it.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
A hybrid of some people working online, but then putting that on the board, or
you could have both.
Yeah, you just have to really make sure that everyone has access to everything.
Yeah.
If you were needing a quicker decision, would you then put?
Yes, it's true.
Can you speak louder?
If you were needing a quicker.
Sorry?
If you were needing a quicker process, would you have a meeting with people present and speak in that? Would you then have somebody to chair that meeting, or would you? What if everybody can't come to that meeting? Would you then just say whoever is at the meeting is enough, or would you then carry it on? Is there any protocol around that?
Okay. So what I hear, if I translate it in terms of drivers, then I would describe it like this. We have urgent decisions to be made, and people don't show up to meetings. And there is a need to come up with solutions about that. So that would be a driver that would belong to your team, and you would address it together in some way. It's obviously important to find out why people don't come to meetings, and then like find out what would motivate or what is missing for them to be present.
I think
in terms of urgent meetings, what I'm trying to say is that but what if this happens, or what if this happens, reveals a driver. And if we think in terms of like what is needed and articulate that, then we get into this habit of addressing topics that relate, that addresses the whole circle with the circle, and come up with our own decisions. Everything itself doesn't give, it's not a solution. It's just a tool, a framework that offers different tools that you can pull in that helps you come up with solutions.
Well, there's also a question in here around about, so you know it's a different driver and you needed to make a decision quickly, so you're trying to have people meet in person, but not everyone can meet in person. So not necessarily about people aren't coming to meetings, but any meeting you'd usually have a subset of the group in. So is there protocol in sociocracy about who makes the decision? Is it the people who come to the meeting? Do you also do something to engage people who can't come to the meeting? Or do you have like a standard protocol? Is that some more of the question?
Yeah, or about the person who chairs that meeting.
And who would chair the meeting?
Okay. Okay, yes, I understand, thanks. Every meeting has a preparation time. So you would send the agenda in advance. People would have had a chance to check if they cannot participate in the meeting, they still have a chance to see what's on the agenda, to check out reports from people, and to express objections or concerns in advance if they have any. So having a written record of the agenda and sending it out to people before so they have time to read through, prepare. You can include links to whatever document they need to write, they need to read, or whatever preparation they need to make, so that when you are in that time together, even if people are missing, you're still able to make decisions, and you will do it in a shorter time because everybody did the preparation outside in their own time. And it can be also virtual meeting, so it's a bit more arduous, but it's possible.
Any more to that? Was that enough? Did you? Okay.
I suppose if it's an emergency and there isn't that time to wait for people to respond, it could be, is there like a process where people quickly make that decision and then record their response to it so that other people in the circle can say, we think that this response was, put their opinions on the response, or because sometimes you don't have that time, do you? Sometimes you have to, you don't have time for somebody to sit and write down what your decisions have been made and then put onto a screen and then wait for people to respond. Sometimes you're faced with situations where you might literally only have that day or sometimes 5 minutes to make a decision.
I wonder if it's that, I'm just clarifying this, is this mixing like policy and operational? So if you've got your role, I'm just asking this, if you've got clarity on what your role is, then within that role you can actually make those decisions. It's just if there's something that's outside that isn't different, that's when you need to have policy meeting again. Is that right? Is that correct?
Yes, it's perfectly right. If it's within your role, within the things you're accountable for, then you can make that decision yourself. If it's something that is beyond your role and it's up to other people to decide, or to the whole team to decide, and it's an urgent decision, then I guess again it's up to you what you do. If it's something that often happens in the team, you might come up with an agreement how to generally deal with situations like that. You can also make in-principle decisions and then check for objections with the whole team or the whole organization later and integrate that system. So there are many different ways.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I like like thinking about operations and then policy.
Yeah.
Kind of the temporal elements of like the government.
Could you hear that?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
No, I heard how she broke that into like talking about like operations and policy. Like in one element, it's kind of like the temporal issues and how do the time factors actually facilitate coordination, and then among a group of actors, and then the second element being among policy, like the kind of the content of the decision and whether that affects other people or the organization at a more deeper level or whatever. And so I thought that was useful. Think of it that way.
I'm not sure I understand.
Just appreciation of seeing the clarity in the distinction between operations and policy, and when you have freedom to make decisions and act on your own because you have a clarity on your role, but then when you see things that impact the other actors in the situation, then maybe it goes to policy or needs to get into a meeting. Sorry, in terms of loudness.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for, I apologize, there's some echo or something, and
sorry, and no one has as loud a voice as I do.
I find it really difficult to understand. But thanks for repeating. Thanks for repeating, and that's a really good point. I want to rephrase, so it's talking about operations in terms of doing things, doing the work itself, and governance. Governance meaning building the banks of the river, deciding together how and where the value flows. So policy, when policy means a decision or an agreement, we actually replace the word policy with agreement in S3 because it just leads very into the politics with policy. So we wanted to make it more neutral. But an agreement is, or a policy, refers to something that we agree to do when a certain situation comes up. Yeah. Okay. So are we on time almost?
Almost. We end at 1? Yeah, so we have about 6 minutes left, so however you want to spend our remaining time.
Okay. Presentation along with other materials after this. So I would mention other just to have an idea that they exist, and if you're interested, you can read more about it. And I would talk a bit about how to apply the principle of consent throughout the whole organization if it's a bigger one with different teams and different circles. So we talked about having a governance meeting. What you see on the screen now is how it works. You have an opening round, administrative matters, the agenda items, which are the drivers itself, a short evaluation of the meeting, and a closing round. It's kind of how it usually works. The meeting is facilitated, so you would have somebody in the role of the facilitator. There is a pattern called proposal forming, which refers to a group of people tapping into the collective intelligence of the system to come up with a good enough for now, safe enough to try a decision to respond to a driver. About role, and this is like the template for a role description, what kind of things we might consider to include in the role description so it's clear for the person. As you see, the second thing is key responsibilities. So we focus on what is really absolutely needed that that person in the role attends to. And it's not like a really long description of what you need to do from A to Z and you just apply it as a robot. So it's only the key responsibilities. We have for selecting. This is a really exciting one. Many groups and organizations pulled it in because it's so empowering when the members of your team select you for a certain role and you get to hear their reasons. And we also evaluate their role regularly according to the frequency of evaluation. We decide when we create the role how often it's needed. And okay. We talked. So I'll go into organizational structure now. I want to talk about delegate circles. This is a drawing. All these pictures you see there, flip charts that we use in our courses. So here on the right side, in the middle, you see a picture of the delegate circle. Let's say it's an organization that has 4 different teams, and each team works on a different area. I don't know how Man is structure exactly, but I'm
Like
sure you
that.
have maybe different projects or something like this.
Yeah, we have work groups focused on areas
Okay.
like
So
tech.
imagine. Okay. So maybe you can imagine that in the context of Man. Let's say you have all these different projects, and each one makes their own decisions around whatever their domain is. And the question is, what happens to drivers that refer to the whole organization, not just the project itself? What would you do in this case? Can somebody answer? Do you have a structure already that addresses this, or a role or something?
Well, we have a board. We want a new set of bylaws for next year that are based in sociocracy more structurally, but we have a board, but then we have representatives from all our work groups and most of our pilots on the board. So the board always hears from all the work groups and there's back and forth there, but the work groups have autonomy, within their own sphere if it's in keeping with the strategy of the board, and they're represented there.
Okay, yeah, so that sounds very similar with what I'm saying, what I'm presenting right now. So a delegate circle would be a group of people that are basically representatives of each of these projects or working groups that come together and make decisions that affect everybody. So in essence, they don't have like they're not higher in the hierarchy at all. They're just selected from the teams they are part of to come together and make decisions about any drivers uh, um, that addresses the whole organization. And in this case, if you have a board, it makes complete sense that they are part of it as well. If you would be to apply the principle of transparency and equivalence, then whatever those people in the delegate circle decide is open and transparent, so everybody can actually see what's happening, what kind of decisions are made. They would have a voice in it, in the sense that they could participate in like large-scale proposal forming, if necessary. This could be one option, or just have the power to object to decisions that are made there if they see reasons to do so. So that would be the delegate circle, a delegate circle that applies the principles of S3. Other way to structure would be backbone. This is more for multi-agency collaboration. There was this question earlier about how about if we're collaborating with another organization that has a very different driver. So as you see here represented, there are 3 organizations with 3 different drivers, and there is a shared driver, and that everybody decides it's really important and relevant for them to respond to. And I'm not sure if I would go into it actually or not. I could talk more about this, or just have a wrap up with all of you, and to hear some you again, like a checkout before we close. What is your feeling about it?
Do you want a couple more minutes on this or wrap up? We could talk about this ourselves if we want later.
Yeah.
What's your preference?
Not all.
Okay. Okay, so I think people are saying a wrap up would be good. and then we can talk more.
Okay.
But it's good to have this diagram because I
okay.
about it.
So
those of us who've gone through other training, so that we can talk about how we apply this, like when we have more time later.
Yeah, I quite like
yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I'll send you the links.
Thank you.
Do you see my screen still?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how to stop it.
If you go back to your control panel, you might have it at full screen that you have to hit escape, but if you go back to your control panel, if you want us to see you again, you can click on your, oh, I love this. We're seeing your fractal
yeah.
organization. But if you want us to see you, just click on the camera.
Ah, okay.
And you can click your screen sharing icon so it stops that.
Okay. Okay, let's see if it works.
And we can make it so you can see us if you want.
Yeah, it says that we're not able to share your webcam, so I'll give that up.
Oh.
Yeah, so just as final words from my side, I really believe and see also and know other ways of collaborating and making decisions together that are complementing the new paradigm, the one in which we recognize that we have the power to contribute to things, and it's our decision in any moment to speak up and basically be accountable. If we Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. So it's up to us to realize that we are invited to show up and to speak up, and we are accountable for the decisions that are made or are not made, and to realize the interdependency between us as a group of people working together. And that's really inspiring for me. And yeah, I've been working in more social oriented groups, and I know the challenges that come with that. And for sure, in terms of value, there is often a lot of alignment, and in terms of making decisions and organizing ourselves, it's often triggers this vulnerability around authority and have somebody having more power than somebody else, and that's where the conflicts are, or that's where they were for me. And I truly believe that S3 and probably other frameworks as well offer solutions for that. So I think it's worth investing some time into that and informing ourselves.
Thank you so much for sharing all this with us. And where are you? Where are you right now?
I'm in England at the moment.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but me and James are traveling internationally, giving courses about S3, and it's increasingly growing the interest and across sector. So we just came from Stockholm. We had a course in the Agile community there, in the IT community, and yeah, it's spreading quite faster than sometimes we have the capacity for it.
Good, I'm glad. I mean, not faster, not too fast for you. I'm glad it's spreading fast.
Yeah. Okay. So any final words from anybody?
I have just a general question. I was curious, do you have, like, is there any, like, reputation systems or reward systems or any, like reward or incentive systems that are actually integrated within the software as well? Do you account for good decision making and somehow reward people for that?
There's not like a sociocracy software at this point, right?
Oh.
Yeah, it's not
No.
like a software based. It's
Okay.
it's a system of decision making and communication, right? I think there's exploration of making some software to support it explicitly. Is that the case?
Yes, yes. James and other people are working on developing software that supports that.
It's amazing.
In terms of rewarding people for making good decisions, I think we are all rewarded if we are in a system that makes effective decisions by the fact that we don't spend so much time on them.
Kate, did you?
It was just, I'm just talking to John, who's part of the Growers Network, on the way that couldn't be here, but we just, because it's quite a lot to take in and a style of communicating. It was like thinking about how we can do this day to day in meetings, that it's getting consent from, like coming into a room where maybe some of us haven't met each other before, and how you run the meeting. And for me, it's getting used to normally just sort of wait for permission or speak out loud, and just the actual circle thing and clarifying questions. And I guess I was asking the question about what's the most basic thing you can do with groups that enable people to get into the groove, in a sense, of the circle thing and all of that. Is that be a good way?
Okay. So we're advocating a lot experimentation, playing, testing. So if you go to a group of people and say, guys, I want to present you this thing, and from now on, let's use it.
Yeah,
It's probably going to trigger some resistance. But if you say, I found out about consent decision making, and I think it's really cool, and it might support us in making more effective decisions. And I wonder if any of you would be interested to have a small experiment to see how it works. That's already very different. So that's how I would start. And then explain how it works and the steps, and use it in some cases and build experience and knowledge about it. Have the discussion. But if people say, "Oh no, I don't want to do it," or "It's a waste of my time," then I wouldn't start there for sure. Usually, any change starts with those who have energy for it, and pushing it to people doesn't work.
Yeah.
So invite people, tell the story, tell why you think it might be valuable. Start a small experiment and share whatever result you have with everybody else, and build momentum from that.
Thank you. Any other parting thoughts before we sign off? Should we just say goodbye? And thanks. Thank you, Lily. It was lovely having you.
Thank you as well. It was super nice to hang out with you. I was still missing your faces.
Oh, can you see us now?
No.
Oh, we're showing you our camera, so I guess we're just looking at ourselves on the big screen then.
Yeah. Yes. So I think always the online meetings like this are a bit of a challenge, because if I would see your faces, I would maybe stop more often or interact more. So that's the limitation of it. And now I see your screen.
All right, so let's all wave. Wave, bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much, you guys. Thank you, Lily.
Yeah. Should I send the links in the chat or where?
Why don't you
Please.
email us because the chat goes away, so we can put them on our notes page. And
Okay, so
Oh, okay.
email?
yeah, so we'll post them. We're making a Google Doc page with our notes.
So could you give me your email, Stephanie, or somebody's?
Yeah.
There it is.
I'll send
Whoops.
details
Don't.
to you.
Yeah, don't you have it from talking to James?
I was doing it last
Ah,
to be honest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat if that works for you.
okay, that would be great. Okay, thank you for all the work you're doing. I think you're doing amazing work and super happy to support you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks again, you guys. Bye. And hi from Marshall Klybon, Ken Orlick. Hello. Who just arrived.
Oh, hello. Goodbye.
We're off to go deliver solar panels in a few minutes.
Congratulations. Have fun. So good to hear it.